In July of 1963, U.S. Congress passed the Civil Rights Act under President Lyndon B. Johnson. This landmark bill promised to outlaw the discrimination of any American on the basis of their race, color, religion, sex, or nationality, and thereby eliminate our country's prior stance of separate but equal. Not only was this seen as a means of amending centuries of oppression, but as a massive step forward in an ongoing pursuit of liberty and justice for all. However, many marginalized groups believe that little has actually changed in the nearly 60 years since the Civil Rights Act first passed, and that its commitment to civil liberty is largely superficial in practice. Why would anyone believe that, you ask? Well, in order to understand the failures of liberal reformation, we must first understand how racism is necessarily woven into the fabric of American life, and how policies often facilitate and are facilitated by racial prejudice, a concept known as systemic racism. When you think of racism, you might think of your wily uncle spouting off racial slurs at Thanksgiving dinner, or even some isolated acts of violence against minority groups. But the fact is that racism is much more deep-seated than that. Racism exists in the shared values and perceptions which long permeated our country all the way back to its first inception. The notion that race is a biological fact and not a social construct has been used to oppress black people, turn them into others, second-class citizens, and otherwise inferior peoples. By studying systemic racism, we may draw a direct line between the arrival of the first African slave in 1619 to the Jim Crow laws, to the Tulsa Race Massacre, to the modern-day lynching of Minneapolis resident George Floyd. Pretending to be colorblind only buries our understanding of history and its ongoing impact in the present day, thereby further amplifying the damages done to black communities. Now, if only there was some academic framework we could use to address such racial disparities. Critical race theory is an academic framework and social movement used by legal scholars to examine mainstream conceptions of race and its effects on the formation of law and policy. A key component of this theory is intersectionality, which identifies and overlaps other social factors such as class, sex, disability, weight, and etc. Civil rights advocate and CRT scholar Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw asserts that if we aren't intersectional, some of us, the most vulnerable, are going to fall through the cracks. CRT scholars believe that by deconstructing historical narratives we tacitly hold to be true, and conversely hearing stories seldom told, we will enhance our understanding of history and correct the issue of systemic racism in the United States. And now to finish off is a word from Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw.
To close your eyes to the problem doesn't make the problem go away. I often tell people, let's think about the fact that we are, a society that built asbestos into our institutions. It's everywhere. We discovered it was the wrong thing to do. But did we respond to that by saying, well, now the solution to the fact that we embedded asbestos everywhere is not to use the word asbestos, not to see asbestos, not to have tools to find where it is in the infrastructure, and definitely not to allow people to learn how to get rid of it. That would be ridiculous. Yet that's precisely what we're doing, what we're saying, what we're inferring from the idea that to talk about race, to see racism, to understand how it functions is to be racist. That's exactly the same kind of ridiculous argument. We wouldn't do it with asbestos. We shouldn't do it when it comes to racism.